Hi everyone, welcome back to our second video of topic 2, the slippery slope of life. So we already covered what is life in this previous video. So this video is our second video and we're going to cover how our prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells differ. So our learning objectives for this video, by the end of this video, you should be able to address or list the basic components shared by all cells. You should be able to describe the characteristics of prokaryotic cells and eukaryotic cells, as well as describe the relative sizes of different kinds of cells. And as always, it's a good idea to write these learning objectives down and answer them by the end of the video, just to make sure that you understand what was introduced in this part of the textbook. All right, so let's begin with the basic components of the cells. So all cells, it doesn't matter if we're talking about the bacterial cells, which are very, very simple cells, or complex animal cells. All cells have these four main components. All cells have a plasma membrane. So that plasma membrane keeps the inside of the cell inside and the outside of the cell outside. So it's kind of the boundary of the cell. Okay. All cells contain cytoplasm. So cytoplasm is that jelly-like substance that is inside the cell. Okay, so that's what everything is suspended within. All cells contain DNA. So DNA is that genetic information. Okay, so we use that genetic information to pass on to our offspring so that when our cells divide, we can create the exact same copy. Okay, and then finally, all cells contain ribosomes. So ribosomes, these are little protein factories. So these protein factories, they are important in making, well, proteins, which our cells need are the building blocks of life. So our cells need them to survive. Okay, so these are the four basic components of all cells. So if we come across something that looks like a cell, but it does not have any DNA in it, then it's not a cell. If we come across a cell that lacks ribosomes, then we can't classify it as a cell. It has to be something else. So it must contain all four of these components to be classified as a cell. And as we learned from the last video, the characteristics of life, the smallest characteristic of life, has to be a cell. So cells are the basic components of life. All right, so let's take a look at the difference between prokaryotic cells and eukaryotic cells. So first off, I think I talked about this in topic 1. So this might be a little bit of a review. So pro means before, and karyotic or kary means nucleus. So it's prokaryote means before nucleus. So a prokaryotic cell is characteristics, they're very small, and they're these type of organisms that are prokaryotes, they are all single-celled. So you'll never see a multicellular prokaryote. So if we look at an example of a prokaryotic cell, first off, it has the four components of a cell. So it contains DNA, but one of its characteristics is it doesn't have a nucleus. So it lacks a nucleus. So instead of the DNA found inside of a nucleus, it's found in just what we call a nucleoid region of the cytoplasm. So that's the second component of the cell, is that it has the cytoplasm. So there's the DNA suspended in the cytoplasm. All right. Remember, cells have the ribosomes, so there's the ribosomes, but there's no other organelles or other membrane-bound things within that simple cell. Okay. We have a plasma membrane, okay, or a cell membrane, same thing. So that separates the inside of the cell from the outside. But our prokaryotic cells, they have an extra layer of protection. In this case, it's called the cell wall. So that cell wall for bacterial cells consists of something called peptidoglycan, and that adds a layer of protection for them. So, they're single-celled, so basically they're just floating out there, and so they need some extra protection from other things like, viruses or protists or anything else. And it also helps support them. So it adds protection and, aids to the shape of their cells. And then they even have another layer that's called a capsule. So not all bacterial cells have the capsule, but some of them do. So this extra capsule allows them to attach to the environment. So if they're going to attach to like a substrate, they might have this extra capsule surrounding the cell wall. So it has the 4 components of a cell, and then it might have, they do have, all of the prokaryotes have this cell wall, and then some have a capsule on the outside of the cell wall. Okay. And then also some prokaryotes have a flagellum, okay, or flagella is the plural. So flagellum, that's helps kind of aid in their movement, so it kind of propels them forward so that they can move. Some of them might have these little hair-like projections, which we call pili, or they're known as fimbriae. And these pili they aid in what's called conjunction. So conjunction is a process where if we have 2 bacterial cells close to each other, their pili can connect. And these pili are like little tubes, and little pieces of DNA can break off from one bacterial cell and pass through the pili into another bacterial cell. So it's not like reproduction, because they're not actually mating and reproducing another cell, but they can actually exchange genetic information between each other. So kind of cool. But that's called conjunction, and we're not really going to talk about it. It's not going to be on an exam or anything, but that's just something that is unique. So these are these little pili that some prokaryotic cells have, not all. And then as far as prokaryotic cells, the 2 domains that have prokaryotic cells are bacteria and archaeans. So you're probably familiar with bacteria. They're everywhere. They're on your skin. They're inside the gut of your digestive tract. So they do have a symbiotic relationship with us. They help, break down the nutrients in our food. They help protect our body from bad, bacteria, other bacteria cells that might be bad and things like that. But there's also bacteria that can cause disease, things like that. So like streptococcus, you've probably heard of that causes strep throat. So, there's some good bacteria, there's some bad bacteria, but they are a type of prokaryotic cells. Archaeans, they are their own domain, but they are what we know as extremophiles. So they typically live in very extreme environments. So think of very hot springs, or deep in the thermal vents, down in like the deep oceans. They can live in high salinity environments, or high pH or low pH, things that normally you wouldn't find other living things surviving in. So they can survive in those kind of things. So those are the extremophiles. So bacteria and archaeans are 2 examples of prokaryotic cells. Well, the only 2 domains. There's nothing else aside from them. All right, and then moving on to our eukaryotic cells. So eukaryotic cells, if you take a look inside, they are a lot more complex. So there's a lot of things going on inside that cell. And they are larger than the prokaryotic cells. They can be, like a eukaryote could be a single cell. So for example, like yeast, if you're gonna make bread, you need yeast to help it rise. So that's a single-celled fungus. If you've ever taken pond water and examined it under a microscope, you might see a little paramecium. So that's a paramecium is a single-celled protist, and it's a eukaryotic cell because it has a nucleus and other membrane-bound organelles. Also, eukaryotic cells can be multicellular, so that means that they can have, a eukaryotic organism could have multiple eukaryotic cells within, like any of our animals, plants, and fungi. So we are eukaryotes because we have eukaryotic cells that have a nucleus. So this is an example of a plant cell. I always like to use plant cells as examples of eukaryotic cells because one big misconception that students have is they think that animal cells are eukaryotic, and for some strange reason, a lot of students think plant cells are prokaryotic. So I want to squash that misconception. So get in your brains that plant cells are also eukaryotic. Look at that nice nucleus in this plant cell. So it's a plant cell, you see it's green, there's chloroplast, okay, so green, has a cell wall. But look at that nice nucleus. So plant cells are also eukaryotic cells. They have a nucleus as well. So our eukaryotic cells, they have a membrane-bound nucleus. So there's a membrane that surrounds it, just like our plasma membrane surrounds the eukaryotic cell, okay? Because it's a cell, and all cells have plasma membrane, our cytoplasm, our little ribosomes, as well as our genetic information. So here's our genetic information inside the nucleus that's membrane bound. Okay. We also have other organelles, and these organelles serve different functions, and we'll learn about those functions within this topic, not this video though. So we have, for example, the endoplasmic reticulum, like the rough ER. So that contains ribosomes, these little protein factories, and they make proteins that help manufacture things to be exported out of the cell. We have the Golgi apparatus, so that's kind of like the shipping center for the cell. We have the mitochondrium, that's the powerhouse of the cell. We have the chloroplast, so that's the site of photosynthesis. We have things, like the big vacuole in the center that stores things. So there's all sorts of different organelles within inside this cell that has different functions. Okay. And so our examples of eukaryotic cells, or organisms that have eukaryotic cells, we have animals such as us, and we as animals, we have a lot of the same components as the plant cell, except of course we don't have chloroplast because we don't photosynthesize, and we don't have cell walls because we don't need to, stand upright. We want to move around. So there's, some differences between plant cells and animal cells. Plant cells, an example of fungi, they're a little different. They have a cell wall like plants, but their cell wall is different. They have a different component to it. They don't have chloroplast because they don't photosynthesize, so they're a little different in that regard. And then protists, they can be single celled, they can be multicellular, so they're a little different as well. So these are different eukaryotes. Eukarya is another domain of life. Okay, so those are the characteristics of eukaryotic cells. So based on that information, which of these do all prokaryotes and eukaryotes share? Is it A, they all have organelles? B, they all have a nuclear envelope? C, they all have cell walls? Or D, they all have a plasma membrane? If you chose D, I would agree with you. So remember, the plasma membrane was one of the 4 components of a cell. What were the other 3? They all have DNA, they all have cytoplasm, and what's the last one? They all have to have, starts with an R, ribosomes. Okay, and then we're going to finish off this video talking about cell size. So again, I talked a little bit about this in topic 1 when we were talking about microscopes. or actually, yeah, the metric system and microscopes. But when we're looking at when we're looking at cells, most of the time we cannot see them with the naked eye. So we do need to look at them under a microscope. So you can see some cells with the naked eye. So particularly usually eggs, like frog eggs, you can see naked eye most of the time. You know, they lay them like bullfrog eggs or something like that. You can kind of see them. Ostrich egg, of course, you can see them. Chicken eggs, you can see them. Human eggs, you cannot. Okay, so they're really small. But most cells you cannot see with a naked eye. You need a microscope. Comparing prokaryotes and eukaryotes, remember in the previous slides, I said that prokaryotes are small, eukaryotes are large in comparison. Okay, so prokaryotes, they range in size from 0.1 to 5 micrometers. So I wasn't able to get the symbol micro, so I'll pretend that's a weird shape U instead of a normal shape U. So there's the weird shape U. So pretend that's over there. It wouldn't let me for some reason in PowerPoint. Okay, so prokaryotes, they have about 0.1 to 5 micrometers. So they're pretty small, okay? And then eukaryotes are larger than that. They can range anywhere from 10 to 100 micrometers. So they land kind of in that range. Though we do have some outliers like the chicken egg. Okay? And you can see even like inside the eukaryotic cell, the mitochondria is larger or about the same size as a prokaryotic cell, bacteria. Okay? So eukaryotic cells are larger than prokaryotic cells. All right, so that's it for topic 2, or excuse me, the second part of topic 2, how are prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells different? So by now you should be able to answer our 3 objectives, list the basic components shared by all cells, so those 4 basic components you should be able to list right now, as well as describe the characteristics of prokaryotic cells and the characteristics of eukaryotic cells. Be able to describe the differences between the two. Describe the relative sizes of the 2 different types of cells. So what's prokaryotic cell versus eukaryotic. See if you can describe in micrometers. Okay, you could do the average. All right. So in my next video, I'm going to go ahead and talk about how eukaryotic cells developed. So I will see you there.